Alright, so this part might be a bit of a controversial one. So let's talk about Freddy slash Golden Freddy. I'll be honest here,
Oh.
he's the most boring monster out of all of them.
Here's the thing. I think Freddy and Golden Freddy should probably be discussed separately. I think they're separate things.
Alright, well, we'll talk about Golden Freddy after regular Freddy, so.
Alright, starting with regular Freddy. I strongly disagree in FNAF 1.
Okay, well,
In all
yeah.
the other games, I can agree that Freddy as a whole is, despite being the name of the franchise, is never even close to being the scariest or most memorable part of any of the games he's in.
Even in
In
Security
FNAF
Breach, he was just treated as like the comic relief character.
I think, and I actually kind of appreciate that direction for Freddy in Security Breach, because he was already not scary. So they kind of just, instead of trying desperately to make him scary, they just made him friendly and like a supportive character. And I think that's a fun way to take his character. But I think the one exception to him being the scariest, and I think the only game in which he is the scariest, is the original. And it's almost exclusively due to how they film him. When he's in a camera, you don't see him at all. You only see his eyes. And it doesn't matter which room he's in, you will never see him. You will only see the eyes. And that is freaking terrifying.
Visually, that is good. I will say it. I will let you continue. I just want to say I do agree. Visually, that is intimidating.
Indeed. And the fact that the only audio cue you have for him moving from room to room is that dark laughter that echoes through the building. And it gives him this menacing, malicious aura. Like, we were talking about how the characters have a lot of personality attached to them through their actions and behavior. With Bonnie, it's like you said, there's a mischievous angle to it. This sort of like, I'm gonna get you. Like, it's almost not as serious as the others. And then with Chica, there's this kind of big, boisterous, like, ravenous, like, I'm a big deal. But with Freddy, he just feels lethal. Like, he wants you dead. It's not a game. It's not a choice. He is inevitable. He is Thanos, and he is approaching. And he is just this... He's death. Like, the fact that when you run out of power, it's Freddy who kills you is like, he represents death in this game. And I think that the fact that they hold off on using him until the final nights is really cool and really helps build up the idea that, like, in the first few nights, you can only die to him if you run out of power. So it's almost like, it's like a character who you aren't even supposed to encounter in normal play suddenly comes into play. It's like the Grim Reaper from the game over screen suddenly is hunting you before you're at the game over screen. There's this, it builds up the tension like there's something far worse than the others after you. And that's represented well in the gameplay because it is way easier to die to Freddy than it is to almost any of the others. Because he's the only one who has two death conditions. Either running out of power, he'll kill you, or getting into your office, he'll kill you. He is the most persistently devoted to killing you out of all the animatronics. And I just love the way they handle him in this game. He is easily, in my opinion, the most scary animatronic in FNAF 1.
Yeah, I can see from the visual standpoint, and Freddy was the one that killed me in my unfortunate error recording, so kind of fitting on the final night I'm killed by Freddy.
Yep.
But here's the thing I always noticed. So at one point I did get this image for the first two nights. If you keep looking at Freddy, he keeps turning to you. First he looks at you with his head, but then the second night his body is looking at you, almost like he's prepping, like he's going to the gym. I'm like, I'm gonna get a workout before I take on this dick.
Yeah.
But then here's my issue with him, is that while visually, how he moves around is almost phantom-like, you know, like a Batman.
Like a demon.
Yeah. Where are you? Freddy.
I'm Freddy Superstar.
Well, that would have really changed the Christian Bale Dark Knight trilogy. I'm Bearman.
Anyway.
Yeah, so here's the thing that kind of ruined him for me. The first moment, because I didn't pay attention to his eyes, like you mentioned. I was trying to find Freddy. But I never saw him because I wasn't looking at the light in his eyes. Which again, another good take is that every time the animatronics are moving, their eyes are always in their normal look. But Freddy almost like, it's like he turns off his eyes, like a light bulb, you know. And all you see is the bulb in his eyes. Even when he kills you, it's just the bulb. Like, he doesn't want to be seen.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to say this. He was kind of the easiest one to deal with. Like, okay, well, like, when it came to... Once I figured out all he did was come from the right side, he was kind of easy to deal with. I didn't need to really keep an eye on his roots because I knew that was where he was all the time. And if Chica wasn't by the door, then I would know, alright then, so Freddy's there. And he would also do the thing where he's looking at the camera right outside the door. I think but his face didn't look too intimidating in it. He looked a bit, much like with Bonnie, he looked a bit too goofy for me.
Matter of opinion, I suppose.
Yeah, like... I'm not going to say he didn't scare me when he jump scared me. No, I screamed. I'm sad that I can't show that recording, but I did scream because obviously I forgot to check the door and he got me. But that's the other thing as well. I couldn't entirely get his personality. Obviously, you could maybe he's more... When you describe it, I could kind of look at it like that, but I feel like when the monster reveals itself to you, because this is the thing, when it gets close to you, the monster should show off its personality. Again, bringing up Resident Evil, that seems to be a reoccurring thing in our discussions. When you look at the different ways how the Tyrant and Nemesis work, the Tyrant was more almost like professional, and when it got close to you, that's when it became more vicious, like it tried to get you no matter what when you were close to it. Whereas, if it was just looking for you, it tried to almost look like it was trying to focus on its mission. Nemesis was monstrous in all manner of movement, but then when he got close to you, much like the Tyrant, he started going more berserk and was destructive. But when the animatronics got close to you, each one represented a different personality. Bonnie was almost mocking, almost belittling you. Chica was savage, like, I want to rip your dick off and shove it right up your asshole. And there's a visual for the viewers. What the fuck am I thinking about? Bill's brain, people. Bill's brain at 8 o'clock at night. But Freddy, I don't know, I just couldn't really figure out his personality. And here's the thing as well, like, people always tend to overlook in horror movies. A monster's personality is what makes them scary as well. You know,
Indeed.
I feel like with a lot of modern horror movies, we don't know the personality of the monster. Like, you know, sure, it's like, oh, they're just monsters, big deal. But I'm like, no, the monster also kind of has a personality. Like, for instance, look at the raptors, the difference between the raptors and the T-Rex in Jurassic Park. The T-Rex acts like a predator. It's sniffing about, it's knocking over things. The moment it sees a light, it's almost like a puppy. It's like, oh, what's that? Like the flare as well. When it sees the flare, it's almost like brainwashed by it. But the moment it sees prey, it goes into its beast mode. Like, it gets savage, it roars, it tries to, like, stomp after you. Then you look at the raptors, and they were, like, almost calm and collected. Like, the moment they figured out they could open doors, you notice they open it slowly. Because they don't want to make noises. They're acting like predators. They know someone's in the room, and they're just trying to stay as quiet as they can. And the moment they hear a noise, they get, like, happy almost. You can see them, like, smiling. They're like, gotcha! Like, almost like a Joker type of dinosaur, you know? The moment they see their prey, they get excited. They're like, oh, I found you. Freddy didn't really give, like, enough personality into how he was like when he got close to you. He was just... because he was hidden too much, I couldn't be scared by him visually. Again, that could have been the point of it, and maybe it's just I'm difficult to please when it comes to these type of monsters. I am sorry if I'm just that stubborn, but yeah, that's why I kind of
think he
Freddy's
does.
is the least scary.
Well, I think he does have an essence to him, and I think that essence is very much death. He is the Grim Reaper. He is whereas the other characters, like, they have secondary goals. Like Bonnie, he's just sort of wandering around, and it's like he occasionally, he's like Bugs Bunny. Like, he'll occasionally wander around, try to kill you, but he's just sort of wandering, doing his thing. You know, he's humming bum ba dum bum bum. Like, he's just having a good time. I'm
just picturing the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 trailer when it shows Bonnie just dead on the floor, him just going, I should have made a left at Albuquerque.
But like, I think like it's clever to, like, you know, with Bonnie, his voice line, you know, it's bum ba dum ba dum. It's like he's not taking it too seriously. With Chica, her main audio cue is like the banging and the pots and pans. It's like, even though she's, you know, wants to kill you, she also gets sidetracked into looking for food in the kitchen. You know, like, she has secondary goals. Foxy, you know, it's like he's, you know, yeah, he's a goober. Like, he has a big chaotic energy as well. But with Freddy, there is no secondary objective. There is no him backing down. There is no him going, oh, I tried, and then wandering off. He has one goal. He has one plan, one intention, and it's to kill you. He is the most malicious out of the animatronics. And I think that's, you know, partially reflected in the way that he is always staring at the camera. In every room he's in, his eyes are looking directly at you because you're his target. You're the one he's coming for. And whereas other animatronics, they might be looking around. They might be, you know, just like not paying too much attention to you. You know, they'll look at you and then look away. But with Freddy, it's unwavering. And then the other thing that cues into his personality is his laugh. He's the only voice, aside from Bonnie going bum ba dum ba dum, that you hear, and it's a dark, malicious, demonic laugh. And I think that really helps paint him as being like, I think Scott Cawthon really wanted to amp him up as being, this is the main antagonist. This is the others. They're kind of like lesser antagonists. Like, they wander around. They have secondary goals.
Oh my
Freddy
goodness. He is the Thanos of the group.
He is. He is like, I am here with one goal in mind. And once he gets to your door, he won't leave. He's literally like, I'm going to camp you out until I can rip your head off. Like, he is inevitably going to get you. Like, that's the main threat. And I think that, so I think he does have that personality. I think he's the most explicitly villainous of the group. He's the most malicious. So yeah. So I think we do have a disagreement of sorts between our opinion of his effectiveness. Yeah. But personally, I think Five Nights at Freddy's 1 Freddy is the peak of horror in the franchise.
Yeah,
It's him.
You do make a point now, and I'm not disagreeing with you. What you're saying, you bring on good points. It's just that this is kind of how I always say, like, you know, horror is also a subjective opinion. What scares you? I'm petrified of the ocean. Most people look at me and be like, you're fucking stupid.
No, the ocean's fucking terrifying.
Right? There's sharks in there, man. They're the kings of the ocean.
There's probably things worse than sharks. Like, God.
Yeah,
abominations.
People who say they're not scared of the ocean are fucking liars. I'm just saying that.
Indeed.
But animatronics don't always scare me if they're done right. And I feel like Freddy, you mentioned in future games, he's not as scary. And you do make points about that. I'm not saying Freddy is like, like in the first game, he's not scary at all. That's bullshit. He made me scream on my first playthrough. My sister's also scared of him because, like you say, when he's in the shadows, it's unnerving. But I guess this should be a segue into Yellow Bear or Golden Freddy. He has so many names on his wiki, it's ridiculous. And much like with the first Freddy, He's not scary, but for different reasons, and this might surprise a few people. He's not scary to me because of Undertale.
Who?
Because of Undertale.
Wait. Freddy's not scary because of Undertale?
No, Golden Freddy. There was a segue into him.
Oh, Golden Freddy. Sorry, I missed that part. But wait, Golden Freddy's not scary because of Undertale?
Yes.
I'm curious. What do you mean?
So, I never played Undertale when it got popular. I'd probably seen the characters on like websites and fan arts and Twitter, but I never really understood a lot of the characters. Five Nights at Freddy's, though, that was what I was exposed to, and for a long while, Golden Freddy made me unnerved because he was a villain that mind fucked you. Like, the moment you see him and you hear that childish laugh and he disappears and then he crashes your game, that's scary. The problem is, though, Undertale introduced me to a far more better made villain, and that is Flowey. Flowey was a true mind-fuckery villain. So, for instance, if you saw my Let's Play people, I killed Toriel. I felt like a shitty person. I cried myself to sleep. However, I didn't save. So I thought to myself, okay, I'm good. And then once you spare Toriel, you meet Flowey again. And, you know, at first he's doing his usual, wow, you think you're so clever mentality. But then he references the fact you felt bad for killing a character, even if you didn't save. And then when you eventually fight him, he messes you a bit more. When he kills you, he crashes your game. When you load up that save file, he makes it look like he's erased your game, and that terrifies you. And like Flowey, like without going too long about the characters at this point, everyone knows him. Flowey ruined Golden Freddy for me because Golden Freddy just feels like a pale imitation. Sure, he crashes your game, but that's really about it. Like, there's nothing really visually scary about him. He doesn't unnerve you. Maybe he was a character I think voice lines would have worked for. He has the child laugh, but maybe doing something more with that. Maybe, because there are some games out there where they look into your computer's file and say your name. Maybe if Golden Freddy said, "Hi, Billy," that would have been great, showing that, oh shit, this guy moved beyond this game. He's in my computer. He exists within it. This is where I felt like characters like Kara, you should look at Jaru's video about Deltarune, he goes into more details about that. And Flowey did a lot better, because even if you were to think you have erased all of your saved data, thinking, I'm going to start from scratch, Kara and Flowey still fuck with you. Even if you completely start a new game. Golden Freddy doesn't really do that. In fact, my first playthrough, I never ran into Golden Freddy. It wasn't until I looked up on YouTube about him, and he was just not scary to me. I get the idea of what he was meant to represent. He was meant to be that unusual anomaly that exists within this world. Like, who is he? What is he doing? Why is he sat like that? Why does he look like Freddy? Why does he crash your game? But, and I was thinking, maybe he's a character that will be further explained in future games. No, he's just another animatronic that can crash your game. He's really not that explained.
Well, I can see where you're coming from.
That's all I had to say. That's all I'd say about Golden Freddy. He just doesn't really interest me as a scary antagonist like the others.
Yeah, and I can totally see where you're coming from. Golden Freddy, it's almost debatable if he even qualifies as like an antagonist in the same way as the others, because like with the others, they're always there. Whereas Golden Freddy's almost more of an Easter egg. He's almost more of like a cute little a bonus character you can stumble across if you're lucky. And
which I wasn't.
Yeah. So from a pure like how effective is he as an antagonist level, I think I can agree with you that he's not that effective. He doesn't have a personality the way the others do. His jump isn't really even that much of a jump scare. He's definitely more there for lore and the plot than he is for gameplay mechanics, which, you know, it is what it is. I think Golden Freddy is an interesting character in the lore, because he is the animatronic possessed by... Well, he's not even an animatronic. He's an empty suit. an empty suit that is possessed by the most vengeful of the victims. For those who aren't aware, Golden Freddy is effectively the main antagonist of Five Nights at Freddy's. What was it called? Ultimate Custom Night. Because in that game, spoiler alert for that game, I guess. But in that game, you're playing as the main villain after he's been trapped in hell.
Do you know what? Actually, Yang Insane did send me a funny video that is a good summary of Ultimate Custom Night. I'll send it to you after this record, but I need to show you. It's funny.
And well, the main premise of that is that in that game, whereas all the other children who were killed, their spirits have moved on to the afterlife. Golden Freddy, the girl who possesses Golden Freddy, refuses to go on and insists on staying behind to torment the purple guy, to torment William Afton forever. And so I think, as a character, when you dive really deep into the lore, Golden Freddy is cool. But as a character in the original game goes, he's not even a character. He is an Easter egg. And like you were saying, like if you want to look at him from the angle of like a meta villain, like a villain who, like he's not just going to kill you in the game, he's going to mess with the world and mess with your game experience because he, that sort of thing, kind of like Flowey. Like he definitely doesn't work on that level. But so if you want him to be more than just an Easter egg, he's not going to do much for you. But as just a neat Easter egg, I think Golden Freddy's neat. I think he's okay. I think he's not the scariest or the least scariest. He might be the least scariest. Since he can just flat out not appear in your game, I guess that could make him the least scariest.
Yeah, I didn't even know he existed until I looked up the wiki about, when I was looking at Easter eggs and when I was looking at the characters and I saw Yellow Bear / Golden Freddy, I was like, did I encounter that? I don't think I did. And then when I looked it up, I was just like, really? That was meant to be the scary monster? Because I think this has also shown this is the problem I think I also have with myself. I sometimes expect too much of things. Like, if I'm amazed by some other thing and I'm introduced something similar to it, I just expect it to act like the same thing. Like, I think something clever Scott could have done. Like, obviously, he never planned anything with Golden Freddy, but maybe when you load it up into the game, Freddy was replaced by the Golden Freddy, and then when you load it into the game, for the first time, nothing happened, and then as you think you've passed on 6 a.m., you see the timers like moving really fast, and then you just hear that laughter, and then he appears again and crashes your game. Not frequently, but just little touches like that, because a thing like Five Nights at Freddy's 3 did, sometimes when you load your game, you get a creepy image of Springtrap. Something like that I think could have made him more uncomfortable for me, because he wasn't even uncomfortable to look at. He just looks like he was just there like
and something that like some of the fan games do for like FNAF fan games is actually make that sort of Golden Freddy type character more of a threat than just a random Easter egg, and I can appreciate that sentiment.
They tried to do it in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, but even then he just looked more derpy in that one. Just a transparent head flying at me does not scare me.
But no, I think the original. I think in the original game, Golden Freddy's fine. I don't think he's a bad addition. I'm glad he exists. I just don't think there's much to say about him.
Yeah, like I said, it just could be where I've just, Undertale's just ruined a lot of villains like that to me. Curse you magnificent game!
Indeed.
You've ruined villains for me.
Man, it's definitely been hard to enjoy silly, simple games like Final Fantasy after playing Undertale. It's like, time to defeat the evil fucklord of darkness to stop to save the world or whatever.
Okay, listen. If every villain was Sephiroth, though, I would downright play it, even if it doesn't make sense in context. Like, if Cyberpunk, as glitchy as it is, had Sephiroth at the end of it, I'd be like, I'm sold.
That's so funny. Like, I was telling I felt that way about Mr. X. Actually, I was like, no video game. Every video game is better if there's Mr. X in it. Like, that was my attitude whenever I finished RE2 remake. It was like, he is the coolest thing. I want him in every video game. I want to be playing freaking Candy Crush, and then he just shows up. Like, I ban him.
Oh goodness, that'd be great.
So yeah, I think there's one more animatronic to discuss.
Yes, and that would be Foxy, who was the one that shafted Bonnie and pretty much stole the spotlight for every newcomer to the game. And I was both a little bit creeped out by him on my first night when he appeared, but this is kind of the same issue I kind of had with Freddy. Foxy, it's really unknown to get what type of character he is. Okay, I will say, he doesn't try and be sneaky. Like, the moment he's out of the curtains, he's rushing towards you. Now, first time seeing that was pretty cool. Because you got an idea, oh, he's different from the animatronics. But he's much like Freddy, he's kind of easy to deal with once you... Like most players on their third night, they kind of understood how the game worked. Yeah. And how the animatronics worked. And yeah, I definitely feel like Foxy, first time seeing him move, was uncomfortable. And even when you hear him start banging on the door with his hook, that's also unnerving. Again, credit to the sound design. The sound design of Five Nights at Freddy's is brilliant. Like, no exaggerated music is needed, which, again, more horrors should not utilise horror music as much. It can be good to amplify a scene, but not to, like... It can sometimes ruin, like, a chase sequence or, like, a jump scare, really.
Yeah. Part of what's clever in FNAF is that the only music comes from Freddy's music box, which means that if you do hear music, it's a bad thing. So that's a fun element to the original as well.
Yeah, because I feel like if each character had, like, their own standout music, that would also kind of take away the monsters. Because I felt like in what was this one game I played? There's like, don't get me wrong, horror games could work really well with music. Every single Resident Evil game, every one of their monsters has a unique soundtrack to them, but that works in a different way. Not when it comes to animatronic like characters. Like if you're creeping around a mannequin infested room, music can work there. But when there's literally nothing, and then you just suddenly amplify music when a monster appears, that just ruins the tension. It's more like an annoyance than, like, when you're just walking and someone just pokes you on the side, you could have been having a nice walk and someone just interrupts it. It kind of feels like that.
Yeah.
You took them out of the moment. And Foxy, I will say, soundtrack-wise, or, sound design-wise, he does have a few eerie moments. Like, we mentioned each character sort of had a voice clip, and with Foxy, he starts chanting like a pirate tune, which was kind of interesting. It's more scary when he's behind the curtain, he's just doing it. Almost like he's awaiting the moment he should appear.
Yeah.
And when he pulls away the curtain for the first time, and all we see is his eyes and teeth, that is visually unnerving. Because you're there wondering, like, ooh, what's this going to look like? What is this thing? And I will say as well, when the phone guy said, like, oh, you did good on your first night, and you're there... And this is another bit which, again, I'm sad I didn't catch my recording. You start feeling confident, like, alright, I get this game. But then the phone guy's like, oh, I forgot to mention the full animatronic. You're just there like, I'm sorry, what?
Excuse me?
Yeah, like, imagine, like, you're working in an aquarium, and you're like, oh, you fed all the fish, right? Yep. Did you feed the great white? What?
The great what now?
And that immediately, what I did, I immediately started getting out my camera and looking around, and Lord of behold, when I looked at the curtains, all I saw was the hook, and I was like, oh fuck.
Yeah, I think Foxy's definitely at his most scary when he's in Pirates Cove slowly revealing himself, like that's definitely him at his scariest. Because at that point, you still don't really know what you're dealing with, as he's like slowly but surely revealing bit by bit of himself. I think that's his horror at his peak. Once he actually runs down the hall and tries to pop into your office, I think his horror element goes away. I mean, it's jump scare wise, it's really effective. Like the first time, it's like, what? They can move. But like after that, it's his horror kind of plummets.
And this is why I say Chica and Bonnie worked better, because they're not running around. It's very rare you see them animated. So then when you're suddenly seeing... Oh, and I will say, when Foxy finally steps out from the curtains and you just see his body, I'm sorry, he looks goofy.
He is a little silly looking.
Yeah, but I will give Foxy this. In the second game, they did redeem him. He was a bit unnerving at times because they didn't make him as animated. That they actually made him very limited on his movement. So I definitely feel like they improved him in the second game. But it was definitely in the first game where he just appeared too cartoony for me. And we kind of mentioned this earlier. His jump scare is just laughable.
Yeah, you got a good point about the whole, he's got big Bugs Bunny energy. And on the one hand, that helps with his personality. You get this impression that he's kind of a spaz, in later games, they kind of emphasize that Fox is a big performer. So you kind of get this impression that he's here to put on a show. But, as far as horror is concerned, he's anything but scary. Which is why so many people love him, is because he's like, of all the animatronics, he feels the most friendly of them, which it has its upsides, but as far as horror is concerned, not very scary.
Yeah, and I will say though, one thing that I think he did better than Freddy, at least, you got an idea of his personality. He's almost impatient, he doesn't try and trick you or anything like that. He just wants to kill you, but he's not smart like Freddy. He just tries to rush down. The moment he thinks you're not looking, he tries to speed down. And unfortunately, though, he makes it too obvious. Like, he leaves his pirate cove completely open and he's running down the hallway rather than at least trying to hide. He doesn't even wait until your camera's up. He just tries to lean in and kill you.
Yeah.
So, again, that does kind of ruin his visual horror, because when you don't see him and you hear his soundtrack or his, his chanting, and you hear him knocking up with his hook on the door, that's pretty scary. I'll give you scare points for that. You did all right. Just a little trophy that's like a shaky hand, like, not bad. Yeah, he's not the worst one. Like, I still think Freddy is. But it's just that, visually you're just not as uncomfortable to look at. Because it's as childlike as the other animatronics are, they do have a bit of an unnerving, especially when you look in the lore and how big they actually are compared to a human. It is pretty scary.
Yeah.
But then you look at the scrawny looking guy and you're just like, whatever. It's like trying to compare like a regular street thug with a pocket knife to Jason Voorhees. It's like,
yeah,
you're not exactly scary compared to this guy.
Yeah, no,
you can be scary. You're just not utilized correctly.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that, and it's just one of those things where they went for. He's unique, he's interesting, and he's definitely fun. He's just not scary. And I think that's kind of the curse of Foxy, is that in most games that he's in, he's not really there to be the main horror. He's not there to be the main source of fear. He's there to make things complicated. He's there to make your job harder, so that way you're more likely to die to the other villain. In FNAF 1, he makes it to where you lose a lot of power and risk getting killed by Freddy. In FNAF 2, he's forces you to use your flashlight a bunch, which means that you're distracted from your other tasks like the puppet or the other animatronics. In
Yeah.
in FNAF 3, he's just a jump scare. In FNAF 4, he's again more of a complication than a threat. So Foxy is definitely one of those characters who he's important for the gameplay loop, but from a horror standpoint, he's kind of handicapped in that regard.
Literally, he only has one hand and one eye.
You know what? Pun not intended, but that's pretty funny.
Unintentional puns are usually the best puns.
Uh,
I will say this though, Foxy has the most adorable plush toy out of the entire group.
He's pretty adorable.
Yes.
Turning him into a little plush toy in FNAF 4 is pretty fun.
Yeah, I'm like, no, I'm just gonna snuggle. I want to snuggle you up. You're so cute. Because even when you look at the plush toys for the other characters, they do kind of still look creepy.
Yeah, Foxy's always been the most merchandise friendly.
You not think that with a pirate?
I don't know, man. Pirates were very popular for a while.
Oh no, yeah, you are right. I stand corrected. So,
But yeah, so that's the main animatronic characters.
yeah, so I guess to kind of wrap this up, we should kind of talk about how the game ended and ask the question: does Five Nights at Freddy's still hold up? So, the story of Five Nights at Freddy's, I'll be honest, is kind of non-existent until the future games. The first game was just meant to be you're an ordinary guy named Michael, and you're just earning money. That was it. There was no plans for sequels. Like, this was just meant to be a one-off game. It was just meant to be a good money maker, and suddenly it spawned the franchise, which it is crazy to look at. These technically 5 animatronics, a faceless character on a phone, and your literal faceless guy, and you're kind of looking at all the future characters that come before it, and you're just like, wow. How did this storyless game about animatronics trying to kill a worker for shitty wages spawn a franchise?
Yeah, it's very much like a case study in miraculous, and just miraculous success. But I think it boils down to it just happened to have a lot of clever details that built up on each other. Just certain clever design choices, like having the animatronics not move, having the no music, having no voice lines. It's like there were coincidental bits of choices made with the design philosophy of the game that overall ended up making it just so much scarier and more engaging than pretty much any other game on the market at the time. From a horror standpoint, both in terms of indie horror and just horror in general, Five Nights at Freddy's stood out. There's very rarely AAA horror games that come out. Horror has always been a very small subgenre in the greater video game industry, and there's even the big names like Silent Hill or Resident Evil. Like Resident Evil, at the time of Five Nights at Freddy's coming out, I'm pretty sure it was like there's years and years between Resident Evil games, and Silent Hill's been on ice forever. So the big names, the two big names in indie horror, or not indie horror, were kind of inactive. And then in the indie side of things, we had Amnesia, but that was years ago as well. So for a lot of the people devoted to horror, Five Nights at Freddy's came at the perfect time to reignite passion for a subgenre that had largely fallen dormant. And I think that plays a big role in its success, combined with a lot of wise and creative character choices and design choices regarding how the horror is presented. And that's not even discussing the fact that the main gameplay has you stuck in a single spot and you can't move, which even that on its own was revolutionary. Like that was a new, unique concept at the time.
Because I think that's what also added to the fizz, that you're not some badass rookie cop that can somehow manage every single weaponry you find. You're not some god-slaying God of War type of character like Kratos. You are stuck in this room. There's no way out. All you just have to do is wait. You can't defend yourself with any weapons. You just have to either wait for the inevitable or use what you have at your disposal to keep the death at bay.
Yep.
Which that's another thing about humanity, is that we are scared being defenseless.
Yeah.
Like, it's in our nature to get scared. When you're in a corner and you just don't know what to do, and your death is inevitably on its way, you feel kind of scared. You're helpless.
Yep.
Whereas when you look at games like Resident Evil 6 and even 4, as much as I like Resident Evil 4, I never felt I was underpowered.
No, you can drop kick hordes of zombies and then blow them up and then strike a JoJo pose. Like, you are not underpowered in that game.
Even in Resident Evil 7 and 8, Resident Evil 8. I was thinking we were on Resident Evil 9 for some reason. Even though you're playing as a quote-unquote normal guy, you never felt defenseless, really, despite the fact you're a normal guy.
Like, no, yeah.
Even against this family that turn into ginormous fungus monsters, it's like, a few magnums to their eye, they're down.
Yeah. In fact, that's one of my criticisms of those games, is that the main character feels a little too competent. He feels just a little too like, I can handle this, despite being a regular Joe who should not be able to handle this. And it detracts from the horror. Whereas in FNAF, you really are a regular Joe. You can't handle this. So you can't fight them. You have to just use what limited resources you have to trick them long enough to stay alive. You can't fight them. You have no capability. It's a very much an underdog story. Whereas, in most Resident Evil games, your characters feel like, super soldiers who can take down gods. Like, they're, even though it's horror, it still doesn't feel like, it's like, oh no, Jack Baker's coming at me, what am I gonna, oh, shotgun, I forgot, and then you're fine. And whereas, and even in more horror psychological games like Silent Hill, it's like, realistically, if you're playing on normal difficulty, even that game, you have the resources necessary to gun down most things. So, the idea of making your character not only underpowered, but literally defenseless is a big part of what makes FNAF work. And it's also a big part of why I think the Alien Isolation game works, is because that's a game where you can't fight the alien. You have to trick it and just avoid it. Like, making your character defenseless is a
that game.
It's really good. It's like,
I think I saw it on Game Pass. I might download it and play it.
It's pretty great. It takes a minute for the action to really start, but once the alien shows up, woo, it is a terrifying experience. But a part of what makes it so effective is that you can't fight the alien. You can't kill it. It's not an option. You are helpless. You can use tricks and devices to distract it and lure it away while you sneak about trying to avoid it, but you can't actually kill it. It's kind of like Scary Breach in that regard. It's like you can't actually kill the animatronics, not normally, but you can trick them and stun them and lure them away and then sneak past them. And obviously, the animatronics in Security Breach are nowhere near as scary as the alien and Alien Isolation, but I digress.
So I think
a big part, point is the sit and survive gameplay style that FNAF introduced was another big part of its success.
I agree. I feel like Five Nights at Freddy's one. I guess this segues into our question: does Five Nights at Freddy's still hold up, and should it be regarded as one of the best indie horror games? And I'll be honest, yeah, I think so. As a kid, I didn't think much of it. I thought it was just another one of those popular horror games people were getting into, And even when the franchise continued on, I never really cared to play the future games because I thought it was just like, like Call of Duty, where realistically, if you've played the fourth game in the franchise, then you don't need to worry about playing the others because it plays exactly the same.
Yeah.
It is crazy how the lore's expanded. I think it gets a bit too silly in its lore, I will admit. But if we're just looking at just specifically the first ever game, let's say no other game came out, and this was the only one we got, I would recommend it. It plays well. I don't think I even encountered any glitches in it. Granted, there's not many mechanics for it to glitch.
Yeah.
But if I can, despite the fact that some of the characters didn't scare me, I was able to continue playing the game in one playthrough, making up to night 5 and then dying, yet never feeling bored. That's commendable, because even AAA games, which this might get me piked someday, as much as I enjoyed The Last of Us Part 1 and 2, there are lots of levels where it does drag on a bit, and even some of the gameplay, especially in the first one, where it didn't start off pretty fun to play, especially in a lot of the fighting moments. It can sometimes feel clunky, or even some classic games like the first ever Mario game. Sure, you could go ahead and play the original retro one, but should you? It's like, not really, because its controls are very dated, very clunky, very slip and sliding. You'll get frustrated over it. I never really felt that with Five Nights at Freddy's. That might seem like a very crude comparison, but it's like, well, if your first ever game, you can play over and over again, and you don't feel any uncomfortableness playing it, gameplay-wise, not horror-wise, that's a game that's worth playing. And it's really rare to get a game where it can age like fine wine. Because
Indeed.
As much as I love Resident Evil 4, its tank controls do kind of ruin a lot of the fast-paced action, but some of the quick-time events are frustrating because both the cutscene and the gameplay are on the same engine, so where you think you're watching a cutscene and suddenly it's like, ooh, press the X button in like 10 seconds. The same with Resident Evil 5, where they improved the mechanics, but they still kept those annoying mechanics of the quick-time events within the cutscenes. And if you missed it, then you have to watch that cutscene again. Oh. It's like, oh, great. And they'll change up the button prompts, so it's like, oh, well, I thought it was the X button, never mind. Whereas Five Nights at Freddy's, I'll be honest, I wouldn't even mind maybe next Billy Ween playing the game again, because you know what? There are things I never saw. There was Easter eggs I never saw. I might even want to try and complete it on my first try again. I nearly did. It's just I wasn't paying attention to Freddy. So, yeah, Five Nights at Freddy's, I'm not even saying it's a fanboy, because I can't really say I'm a fanboy, because I've only realistically played the first one. It's a good horror game, and I think it deserves the praise it gets. Sure, did it get overhyped? Maybe. Was it deserving of that hype? Absolutely. The game was made pretty well. As simple as it is, it's a great game and worthy of being like one of the best indie developed games online. And that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I more or less agree with that assessment. Anytime you look back at games, there's 2 different ways to look at them. One approach is how fun are they actually to play? Like, are they enjoyable today? And the other approach is, were they important at the time? And some games, especially in the horror genre, were incredibly important, but didn't really age well. I'm personally not a particularly big fan of most of the Resident Evil early game editions from a gameplay standpoint. And I understand that some people prefer that. I personally think that when you take the nostalgia out of it, the originals, like, let me put it this way. I think RE2 was extremely revolutionary and important. I think RE2 Remake is an infinitely better game.
Yeah,
it's not necessarily. Yeah, it's like, I think like the originals were way more important for the industry and for the genre, but they didn't necessarily age like wine or anything. Like, even Resident Evil 4. Like, Resident Evil 4, you have to get over those damn tank controls before you can even begin to enjoy the game. And if you can't, you don't get to have fun. But when it comes to something like the original Five Nights at Freddy's, I think it's a rare game where not only has it aged fairly well and is still fun to play today, but it was also very important for the genre. And that's a rarity. Most of the times, the games that are the most important for a franchise are the ones that are oldest and shittiest. Um,
Like people, we can all be blind to our nostalgia. Like as much as I love the first Halo Combat Evolved, there are some moments I'm like, yeah, that needed to be refined a bit better.
yeah, and even like I said, stuff like Mario. It's like I like the original Mario. I think it's okay. Would I prefer to play Mario 2, Mario 3, Mario World, Mario Land like over the original? Hell yes,
Yeah,
anytime. Like
even those are
obviously.
dated now compared to like the Mario DS version of those games, which was a remake.
Yeah, or like taking something like Legend of Zelda. It's like the original Legend of Zelda is a cool game, and it was very important at the time. I would prefer to play almost any other Zelda game except it, though. Because it's like it's fine, it's cool, it's neat.
I
It's
mean,
not as good as Ocarina of Time. And Ocarina of Time, like Ocarina of Time is an even better example. Ocarina of Time was like industry-shattering levels of important. It's still like the highest critically reviewed game in history.
damn.
It's not as good as Twilight Princess. It's not as good as Wind Waker. It's
Oh,
it's like
Wind Waker is mwah, it's perfection. But I haven't
agreed,
played Breath of the
and
Wild
it's
yet,
like
so
neither have I. But like it's one of those things where it's like Wind Waker, Twilight Princess. They were not as important for the industry, but they were more fun games. Whereas Ocarina of Time was obscenely important for the industry, not necessarily as fun as the later installments. And with horror, like FNAF, like I'd say FNAF is one of those cases where the original, like the whole franchise kind of stands the test of time. Like some of the games are worse or better than the others, but none of them are unplayable. They're all decent experiences at worst, and some of them are legitimately really fun. Uh, and I think I can agree with you. I think the original Five Nights at Freddy's, it holds up. It's pretty good.
yeah, so I think that's all we can really say about it. It's a really great game. I was really expecting not to look at it as I wasn't looking at it to talk about it this positively. I thought it was going to be one of those overhyped games that it's only a simple game, but when you do look at the little doohickeys of it, there is something unique about it that stands out amongst other horror games. Yes, it's simple in its gameplay. There is no debate about that. But there are some games where they try and go a bit too complicated. Like a game I played on my channel only briefly because I got frustrated with it. Daymare was an annoying attempt at trying to be another game. It's puzzles, no joke. You had to figure out a password, but also know Greek.
Doesn't everybody know Greek? Come on.
So I'm trying to figure out this keyboard that doesn't have like the normal layout of a keyboard, but also understand Greek. And do you know what's even more embarrassing about it? They have a skip function in this puzzle, so you could just straight up skip it because even the developers thought that was too much.
Yeah, that's kind of funny.
So
I think some of the Resident Evil games did that too, where like you could like set the puzzles to be off or to make them like super easy. So that's kind of funny.
yeah, so whereas Five Nights at Freddy's, it's not difficult. I mean, obviously 2020 mode, that infamous mode. I just love calling it the 420 mode for obvious
Of
reasons.
course,
For
naturally.
future Bill, you know what image to edit in.
Awesome, dude.
So yeah, when you try and but that's an optional thing, like like you said, a completionist thing. But if you were to play it like in my first playthrough of it, I played from the first night all the way to the fifth, and I died on the fifth. There were never moments I felt frustrated with its controls because I fucked up. It was my fault Freddy killed me.
Yeah.
And it's very rare for a game to make me feel like it was my fault. The only games that I've ever done that to me is either Dark Souls, Bloodborne, or Star Wars Fallen Order, and of course Five Nights at Freddy's. There were future games though did get a bit chaotic with a lot of, like the second game introduced, what was it, another 6 animatronics?
There's so many.
Yeah,
There's so many.
and there will be things I want to say about that game if I ever play it in my own time, but yeah, if I was to choose whichever Five Nights at Freddy's game I would play, the first one. That one stands the test of time. I think it's going to stand out amongst one of the best indie developed horror games, next to Amnesia and Outlast and all the rest.
Indeed.
So, yeah, I think that's pretty much all we had to say about it. So, Jaru, you want to do your outro and I'll do mine?
Sure thing. Like if you enjoyed the video, comment if you got something to say, subscribe if you want to see more, and as always, have a fantastic day.
And on that note, thank you ladies and gentlemen for watching, and if you enjoyed what you saw here, be sure to share the video around, get the channel growing, and stick around. We might have more in stock for you. Farewell everybody.